Memory is a cognitive skill that's long been studied as a window into the workings of the mind. But our memory is more than a recorded database. Hart demonstrated that most people can fairly accurately determine if an answer is stored in memory, even when they can't remember the answer. It can be done by simply having them access a metacognitive feeling about what they remember. Under normal circumstances, most people possess this metacognitive awareness described as metamemory, allowing them to access abstract qualities of their own memories. Memory is also one of the more anxiety-provoking and fragile skills of the brain, evidenced by nearly 1 in 8 Americans over the age of 60 reporting that they've noticed a decline in their memory. But memory loss is more complex than the picture of gradual decline that is usually painted. A famous brain lesion patient identified as HM had most of his hippocampus removed during a lobectomy to control his seizure activity. Later, he could not form new long-term memories, but maintained a relatively intact short-term and working memory. Essentially, HM was able to remember information over short intervals of time, but he would subsequently forget whatever had just happened when his attention was drawn to something new, or there was an attentional shift that refocused his working memory. Interestingly, though HM was consciously unable to form new memories, he was able to demonstrate motoric muscle memory and spatial learning through repetitively playing new pieces on the piano. Essentially, HM could be taught to play new music on the piano, which he could play later, despite never remembering that he had been taught. Damage to other limbic structures can also have dramatic impact on social behavior, some of which produces a range of aggressive behaviors. However, damage to a limbic structure called the amygdala can actually lead to a decline in such aggressive behaviors. Inversely, repeated exposure to fear or traumatic stimuli can lead to an enlargement of the amygdala, which is seen in patients with post-traumatic stress disorder. This produces hypersensitivity to certain stressors and increased aggressive behavior. But it's not even that simple. More recent fMRI studies of the prefrontal cortex and amygdala in PTSD have challenged that there is a one-to-one correlation between trauma and violence. It seems that this region's connection to violence may be overblown, as trauma seems to set the stage for emotional response, but specific behaviors are likely the result of learning rather than just a simple response to the damage. This said, limbic brain and frontal lobes are involved deeply with our emotional response to others. Another example of this connection is damage to this pathway produces an inability to change strategies in an economic game when it becomes clear that the other person is taking advantage of you. This is a condition called pathological altruism. Pathological altruists present with an inability to detect angry facial expressions that affects their social judgment. Now, this is a problem that's seen in other social disorders, but here there is a corresponding loss to negative intentions of others. Brain damage is rarely clean or exact. Often damage to the brain leads to skill deficits that are only partially obscured to awareness. It has been the general assumption of neurologists that if damage were just more exact, then specific areas of localized brain function would appear. However, surgical ablation studies where lesion damage can be very tightly controlled just seems to add more questions than they answer. And we will be delving into that in the next video.